Hello, everyone, and welcome to our circle of Anne Salve women. For today, I'm going to be talking about my article, Dare to Ask Even the Stupid Questions. And that always seems like a very strong word to me, the word stupid, right? And I always say to myself, it's okay, as my papa would always say, it's okay to say bad words out loud. I remember going through my rebellious years of just cursing because I would hear my papa every time I'd come in and he'd be watching any sport, and we had like local just minimal channels on our TV. So if it was bowling, if it was golf, if it was baseball, I mean, of course he'd be so excited if it was baseball, basketball, the major sports and so forth. But he would watch any sport, and I remember just really taking on that strength and admiration for him to just be expressive verbally. And then I started to pick up on those things, not to his fault at all whatsoever, just thinking, it's pretty awesome, pretty cool to be that same way. But as a young lady, my mama would always be there to correct me and saying, Anna, don't speak that way. And my papa, I remember, it really has stuck with me. He would say, it's better to say bad words out loud than to call other people names, whether it be ugly and stupid and fat and all of that. I mean, he actually just really was able to express that to me in a way that has stuck with me all this time. And so with me, I'm always careful to say certain things to my children and to my students. And the funny thing is I will say it in a very indirect way. Like if I am upset, I will generalize it, but I never ever feel like it's right to be able to go ahead and just express truly pinpoint someone, because it's weird how you have a forgiving heart as a mother and as a teacher, where that the moment may not be the best of you, and yet you have to call out the behavior or the actions, and still you have to make sure that you're not coming at it to a point where they're feeling that it is something that you're commanding in the presence of who they are, and thinking that that is who they are. It's choices that they make. And so when a person asks a question in the classroom, and I kid you not, I always hear, do we have a quiz today? And you could just announce that for so many times for like 2 weeks, maybe even just letting everybody know. I like to let everybody know I'm a pre-planner of when is the next assessment to be anticipated and so forth. But it never fails. Just like being a mother, you'll say something over and over, and again you have to have a forgiving heart, because you feel so prophetic when you say something and someone will ask just really, I say the silliest questions, but you just feel almost to a point where you already anticipate it's going to he asked. And so all of a sudden it's like, we have a quiz today. I'm like, oh my goodness, yes we do. And so with that said, I remember my son, one of my sons asking me, Mom, is 0 a real number? And I was prepared for that, only because what he didn't realize is that I ended up seeing that very same, they like to watch, it's like one of the things that we say is, okay, if you've worked hard and play hard, then you can watch some entertainment, but try to fill your mind with great things first. That's education to you. So I'd already seen this snippet from his brother, and he didn't know, because I just happened to look to see what his other brother was up to. And, a very good one in talking about, is 0 a real number? And of course, these are like philosophical questions, because it can go either way. And in my article, I know that I may not, and sometimes as much as you want to try to explain it, these are one of those things where it's just so difficult sometimes for people to grasp, that I can understand why someone said it's undefined. We can, you can add 0 plus 0, right? Because nothing plus nothing means nothing. And just, I think I remember saying that very close to that line that Eddie Murphy had stated in his Raw comedy. My goodness, had me in tears as a teenager. But the funny thing is we can understand, like if you go to the bank, you know it's real, because if you see zero, I mean, I've been a teenager and I've worked since I was 14. I've had my own bank account, and of course, you know, there are times where you're frivolous with your money. And so as there was a time where there was an instance where I remember seeing something. I was like, there's got to be a joke. And, you know, and I was able to question what was going on with my account. And I, you know, knowing that zero is real, because that really then identifies nothing, like you have nothing. And so when you subtract nothing from nothing, you also get nothing. When you multiply nothing from nothing, that no matter how many times you multiply nothing, you will end up conclusively with nothing. And so division is difficult, and I understood that. I remember being in high school, and I remember my high school teacher having this debate with one of my classmates talking about, you know, why it's considered undefined. And it's like, I really truly understand why it's like, it's not something that you can further forgo, because yes, you can divide nothing, because it's like, it's what it is. On, you know, we have absolutely nothing. You know, Peter Panners would obviously say, okay, you know, we can make up something that's not there. But when you divide nothing with nothing, it doesn't exist, right? You can play all you want with zero, but all of a sudden when you're trying to divide it with something that is zero, does not exist, then it's essentially stating that you're trying to divide something that we know is nothing with something that doesn't exist. And it's you know, that zero being real, and then all of a sudden you have the undefined, because you're trying to divide zero, nothing, there's something that is not there, with something that does not exist. That is as far as I can understand. I mean, I got it. I was in high school and I understand, you know. But when you try to explain that to people, I could see why they're saying that zero is not a real number. And yet, if you have come through it many, many times, whether it be a zero on your test, or, you know, your assessment, or whatever it may be, that you know it has a significant, really a significant meaning, then you know that zero is definitely a real number. And I recall just really formulating that understanding with my son, and he's so quiet and just kind of like processing what I'm saying, but I don't think he was prepared for my response, because I was prepared for that. I mean, that was just one of those philosophical things that you really think about, and it's difficult sometimes to explain something that you know, and yet, you know, it makes sense to you, and yet it doesn't, it may not, how you convey it cannot be comprehended in the way that you understand it in your heart and your mind. And so there goes again, you know, dare to ask the even stupid questions, because no matter what, it is your self-fulfillment. And that's how I look at it. You cannot be afraid to ask. And I don't recall mentioning this in my video, but there have been times where, you know, I would tell my own children, the most you're going to get is a no, but that doesn't mean that you can't go on to someone else that will eventually give you a yes, you know? And just things like that, where you ask and it's something that you persevere with, because eventually you'll stop asking. And I feel like when I don't know something, I just came from like my Zoom. One of my favorite things to do is do Zumba. I really love to work out, but in addition to that, free that spirit and just dance away with such good spirited people. And there's this one guy in there that just told me, you know, he asked me what I was doing. Oh, I'm a math teacher and so forth. And then all of a sudden he felt compelled to tell me, oh, I work, you know, with the artificial intelligence. And I was like, oh my goodness, you know, like all of a sudden this scientific piece of me that just sparked up, and I was so excited to talk to someone who works with the AI. I was like, oh my goodness, so you know about the AGI and the ASI and all that stuff, and you know, eventually the super intelligence that and he's just like nodding, and you know, and I just know he knows so much more than me. But for me to ask certain questions, you had to think to yourself, Does he even think that I'm asking something worthwhile? And who cares? Because the more seeking saves nothing. And so for me, I realized that as time progressed in life as a teacher, it's like you really have to create that safe environment in your class where you say to yourself, if I can ask a stupid question, again, it's a strong word, you can go ahead and ask a question that you may think is, and it may come out as, but it may not be to you, and that's all that matters. And so I remember, and I mentioned this, and I'm going to humbly say this in here, but I remember being in a meeting, and I remember, someone talking about some matter and talking about the word sodomy, and I kid you not, I was like, what's sodomy? And it just rolled out, because if I don't know it, I'm going to ask. And I was so grateful for my colleague who just, without probably even blinking, I think he did, but just really just answering that to the fullest. And that's that teacher skill where you just kind of get yourself to be just having no change in character and answering it point blank, because it was a question I had and it was needed to be answered. And I was grateful for that, because it hit me later that it may have been a question that may have made people uncomfortable for me to ask it. The thing is that's the only way that you will actually learn. And I know when I go to places that my husband's one of those that, he will ask because he's very analytical. I will ask because I'm very curious. And so for him, he is thinking things through with the purpose of knowing for the functionalities of things, direction and so forth. And he's very detail oriented and wanting to know, when do I take a left, when do I take a right? And when it comes to stuff like that, I'm more generalized. And in fact, I tend to compartmentalize what is important for me, and I know that I turn off my brain. I know this, and because I've caught myself many times where over the weekend, if we're helping out somewhere and someone asks me like a mathematical number, I go, oh, not thinking, I'm not a math teacher over the weekend. And I'm okay to answer that way, because for me, honestly, I think that everybody is, you are your own individual person. And sometimes you have to shut down what isn't important to you right now. And you get to a point where you don't really care what anyone thinks, yeah, okay, sometimes you're going to look back and go, maybe I should have handled that or addressed that or answered that in a certain way. But at the same time, you have to move on. And so when I ask a question, it's for me to know. That's it. And it's for me to grow. And so if it may seem silly to other people, I may not get the answer. I may get someone to, sometimes very condescending, way. And, because you run into that type of world where sometimes people will think that they are greater than you. They're, sagacious and the erudites and whatever have you, the savants, all of a sudden they may think, whoa, no one's ever asked me that question before. But I would like to believe that those actually who are very knowledgeable, they have that look in their eyes like, and I remember a professor saying in college going, how did you know? Like I blurted out an answer. I don't remember what answer, whatever class it was, but I blurted out an answer, and the professor had asked me, how did you know that? And I was just like, oh, because I read this from somewhere else. And it was like that moment where I perhaps would not have answered that question if I had not asked elsewhere. And so I always think to myself that the world is a puzzle pieces, and you put it all together, and what may seem silly to ask now, it's a repertoire that you're building toward an understanding of something else, or an understanding of that moment that then builds up to something else. And so with my article, that's just really emphasizing to dare to ask even the stupid questions, because in the end, all these small stupid questions, right, could come up to be the one thing that could create world peace, that could and yeah, that could be another topic, because how is world peace when there's always people who want division and who always want trouble, right? There's people who hunger for that or thrive for that and live for that. So, wherever there's darkness, there's like the yin and yang. I mean, there's always going to be that. I mean, I've reflected on that, and I've okayed myself with that, as I'm sure many of us do know. You go out there and you interact with the world, and you're not always going to get what you want, from the world. And that's just it, right? We're not always happy people. Some people are not always happy people. And again, another topic to talk about, right? But when it comes to asking questions, it's a self-fulfillment. And you have to say to yourself, I'm going to keep asking until I feel like I don't have to ask about that anymore. I mean, I know that everything that I'm reading, I just read headlines, and then if I'm intrigued by it, then I'll read furthermore. But I try to stay away from things that I know is not going to be factual. It's not going to help me really grow. It's just going to be something that perhaps will make me feel like there's something, I don't know, like people are intrigued by perhaps what other people's lives are, what's happened in their lives, and I'm more intrigued of how is this going to impact my life. And so if there's anything that's there and that I really want to see that could help benefit me, help me grow, help me to reprimand my own being, and knowing that I could do better and see better, feel better, hear better, in a different parts of the world. I really think that that's why we ask questions. And so as a teacher, as a parent, and I think all of us have, have the impact and the power to be a teacher in many, many ways, whether you realize or not. I mean, I can't wait to speak to that, that other person again, talking about, and I know that person is like massive information that I probably want to dig just politely, see if I could get anything. Because when a person gives you some light of what they do, then it's like they're an open dictionary. They're that Google University. They've created the Google University. And so I just know it's like, oh, I like that shortcut. And that's why I used to love working out early in the morning, before sunrise, and while my children were still sleeping, and I'd go work out, and I get to be with all these retired people that were from the military, that have lived a rich life, and I mean rich by their wisdom, by their experiences, by their journeys. And I would go there, the elliptical, and I would listen to whoever was next to me, and I'd ask questions. And I have always felt like I was that person from the time I was young, where people kind of like are surprised by it. But no one should be surprised with you to ask questions. And I'm going to leave it at that, because we're in this world to try and find out about each other, what our brains are thinking, what we have to contribute. And every one of us matter. I don't care what you do. There's something about you, there's that gift about you, that expertise about you, that you may think doesn't mean anything to anyone else. And yet it is a lot more intriguing than you think, because to you it's your natural gift. It is something that you don't think anything of because it's so easy for you. But yet what's so easy for you, because it is a gift, you have to understand other people are driven to really get to know all those pieces that you have put together, and yet to them it's like so many components to it that doesn't make sense, and it's for you that may be the only person that can make sense of that. So there's my message to you. You need to keep asking those questions for your sake, for all your puzzles, and I'm going to have to keep asking my questions for my puzzles. And we are here to find us, right? Our own purpose and our own destiny in every moment that we climb to that. We are that masterpiece that we're creating. And it's there for you to go and search. So keep going. In the words of my mother, God bless us all, and do have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.